I need one. 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Welcome back to Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network as we come to you not only from our Capital City studios in Columbia, but also in Dunk Kingsmore Stadium and the campus of Clemson University, where the Clemson Tigers and Florida State are already underway in the rubber game of their 3-game series. They split the first 2 games of this series, and now Clemson and Florida State battling for supremacy here this evening in the series. Clemson was able to get out of the opening inning with Jake Higginbotham getting a strikeout, a flyout, and a ground out. So nothing across for the Seminoles, and now Clemson will take its first turns at bat here this evening. Once again, no Keir Meredith in the lineup for Clemson as he's been bothered by his shoulder. Robert Jolly is in left field replacing him, and replacing the spot that would normally be with Grayson Bird at second base is Sam Hall, who he's been in for the last couple of games as well for the Tigers. Last night or at least yesterday afternoon, rather, at Founders Park, South Carolina lost to Ole Miss 6-5 in 10 innings, Corn. And this is obviously something where you have to think it's an opportunity missed for South Carolina because they had that game in the grasp with a 2-run lead with 9 defensive outs to play with.
Yeah, it was a game where they couldn't come up with some of the critical hits when they had runners on base. I think Mark Kingston lamented afterwards that the Gamecocks had 13 base hits and drew several walks as well, and just didn't get the big hit to keep the big offensive explosion going that they had built over the weekend, because they had scored in double digits in the first 2 games. And I guess he was maybe getting a little spoiled and expecting that to kind of continue, but he also gave credit to the Ole Miss pitchers for doing a good job in keeping South Carolina's run total down on Sunday and giving their team a chance to come back and win that game in the end. If I remember, Will, you were there. I think it was a homer in the 10th that won it for Ole Miss. Am I right about that?
Sacrifice fly.
It was a sacrifice fly.
Sacrifice fly, okay.
They had 4 solo home runs in the game, so it was a home run that tied it off of Eddie Demurius. And the weird thing is that was his longest relief outing of the season, 4 1/3 innings. It was his second longest outing overall, and he was asked after the game about Demurius, about whether or not they were trying to push Eddie too far past the limit. And he said that they'd rather go to battle and die with him on the mound rather than anybody else there. And they felt that he was their best arm out of the pen to get it in that high leverage situation. Here's a little bit of what Mark Kingston had to say following yesterday's 6-5 extra inning loss to the Rebels.
Disappointed we didn't win the game, obviously. It's a really good team in the other dugout. Both teams really played hard to win. And I just told my team that when a top 5 team comes into your park and is happy to win 1 game, must mean we're getting pretty good.
Mark, you guys didn't get it today, but you did get the series. Just how much of a momentum boost is that going into these final 2 weeks of the regular season?
Well, we'll worry about that, once we get back to work on at the beginning of this week. Just right now, disappointed we didn't win today, because it's always about today. Friday, Saturday were great, but we came out here to win today. So we'll worry about momentum once we get back to work. But today's just very disappointed. We're all disappointed we didn't get that win today.
What did you see from Eddie today? And I guess, was there any kind of indecision about sending him out there for the 8th?
No, he's our go-to guy out of the bullpen right now. He did a good job. I mean, the 1 home run that game is just a 2-strike pitch he left way up in the zone that we all wish he could have back, and I'm sure he wishes he could have it back. But he goes out there and he competes his butt off for you. So if we go down with Eddie out there, I think we can live with it, because most of the time it'll go our way.
Is TJ okay, or what was the thought process of
No, TJ tweaked his back. That's why we had the pitch hit for him there at the end. He tweaked his back, couldn't take that last at bat, so that's why we had to go with Noah there.
Mark, looking ahead on Wednesday, obviously going to be a big game at the minor league park. Coach Holbrook's coming in. What's your history with him? Did you guys overlap at UNC and play?
Yeah, we were teammates for a couple years. Haven't given that game a second thought, truthfully, in a long time. So focused on the SEC and this weekend right now. So we'll worry about that game in a day or two.
What was Ole Miss's pitchers doing today? It seemed like you guys couldn't find that big hit late.
They got power arms. They threw a bunch of 95-mile-an-hour arms out there today with decent breaking balls. So just did enough to keep us off balance. I think, once again, get 13 hits against arms like that. I think that shows the progress we've made. We just didn't get one more big hit. We left 13 guys on base today. That was clearly the difference.
What have you learned about your team this weekend and these last few weekends and winning these big SEC series?
Just we're getting a lot better, and that's what you ask out of your team. Get better as the season goes on. Keep working hard. Deal with the ups and downs of an SEC season, because there will be ups and downs in this league. Any league where if you play 500 ball means you're pretty good, that means you're going to have to deal with some adversity. Tough loss today, but what I've learned about my team is that they will fight till the very last out, no matter what. And that's one of the best things you can say about a team and about a program.
That is the head coach of the Gamecocks. And you mentioned the missed opportunities, Corn. The fact of the matter is he is able to, draw on the first two games of that series, again, knowing what they had. And they had opportunities aplenty in that late game situation, even in the eighth inning after the Rebels had tied it. They were able to get the first two men on with first and third and nobody out, with the top of their lineup turning over, with Hopkins and also Madison Stokes involved in that, and Carlos Cortez in between them, and they can't get that run home. And that's one of the few situations we've seen recently where South Carolina just could not get it done.
Well, Caracci came in, I think their ultimate closer that was throwing darts, and he got them out of the inning. Always felt, though, Will, that had they gotten into the 11th or 12th, he was about to run out of gas, and they just could not carry it another inning before giving up that sac fly that ultimately was the winning run for Ole Miss.
Well, he almost ran out of gas in the 10th inning. I mean, Stokes got up in the 10th inning with a chance to possibly win it with the bases loaded. I mean, there's two very uncharacteristic at-bats from a senior there, where he struck out in the 8th and then struck out in the 10th again. I mean, it wasn't like South Carolina didn't have their opportunities. They flirted with victory, if you will. And I think, too, even coming back on multiple occasions in that game, they were living a charmed life even to that point of the ball game, but just did not have the right combination down the stretch. But now, of course, Corn, you spin it forward, and you have, and again, we'll talk about it more tomorrow and Wednesday, but you have probably, if you had to at least guess, outside of the Clemson series, the most anticipated single game of the season, the redo with Chad Holbrook.
Yeah, but you know what? Chad's not going to throw a pitch. He's not going to swing a bat, at least not in the field of play. And, he's going to coach his team. And the Cougars, at one point, were going very well. They've been struggling a bit here of late, and their RPI has taken a little bit of a hit in the last couple of weeks. They have dropped to 73 in the RPI. Still a good record at 32-16. And very much in the hunt in the CAA at 14-7. So he can feel good about what he has done in his first year at the College of Charleston, a 25-7 record at home at Patriots Point. So the home folks are certainly pleased with what he has going on there. They are coming off a successful weekend in which they took 2 out of 3 from Towson. In fact, they've sort of rightened the ship a little bit now. They've won 5 of their last 6 after losing 6 in a row. So things are kind of back on the right track there. Should be a lot of fun. And listen, I'm not going to tell fans how to behave, but there's no reason for anybody to get on Chad Holbrook. There's no reason for that kind of stuff. He should be treated not only with respect for what he did in his tenure. Don't forget, he was a key cog in helping to build championship teams at South Carolina. He wasn't the head coach. Ray Tanner was, but Holbrook was a key cog in A, recruiting a lot of those players, and B, working with them from a hitting standpoint. Yes. Remember, when he was hired, one of the things that Tanner talked about with Holbrook was his ability as a hitting coach, his ability to teach players how to be patient at the plate and work walks and things of that nature. So he deserves credit for that. No, it wasn't a great run for him as a head coach, but it wasn't a disaster. And you also have to consider what he did in the community with his foundation and his work in that area as well. So I would hope that the fans would greet him warmly, and with the respect that he deserves. And we'll talk more about that coming up and get more from Clemson in just a moment.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Will Pelagic here at Doug Kingsmore Stadium, along with Phil Kornblut, Professor Tom Hayes in our Columbia studios. No score here in the second inning as Clemson and Florida State play the rubber match of their three-game series in Clemson. Clemson lost the first game in extra innings, won the second game in blowout fashion. They had two base runners with a pair out in the opening inning, but failed to score. got him on via the free pass and also with a hit by pitch, but nothing doing. The Tigers, nothing, and Florida State, nothing. Again, Clemson, if they win this contest, will keep, again, sole possession of first place in the ACC Atlantic. They still have one series in hand over the majority of the teams in the league. They have one non-conference series left in their season against Austin Peay, and then they'll also have their final series of the season at Pittsburgh. This is their final home ACC series of the season. Corn, you have some NCAA women's golf you wanted to keep us abreast on.
Absolutely. Division I and Division II, the tournament's getting underway today. So let's go out to San Francisco. You know, I left my heart in San Francisco once.
Tony Bennett.
So they are, looks like everybody is in, and UCLA leads at 8 under par. Kent State and Colorado are next at 4 under. South Carolina is tied for 11th at 8 over par. That's 296. And so they are they're in the hunt there. It's early. It's the first round, and nothing to be too panicky about there. So that's what South Carolina did today. Clemson is playing along with the College of Charleston and also Furman. They're all playing in Tallahassee, and Washington is your leader there at 15 under par. But Furman, a good day, is in second place at -8. Clemson is tied for 4th at 3 under par, and the College of Charleston is also in the field at +19, and Coastal Carolina is in the field at +21. So you have Furman second, Clemson tied for 4th, College of Charleston is 15th, and Coastal Carolina is 16th down in Tallahassee. Now to Division II. This is the men's southeast region, and they're holding this in Conover, North Carolina. And Lander sits in 4th place at 8 over par. West Florida is your leader at 2 under. Lander sits in 4th place at +8. USC Aiken is 14th at +16, and Newberry is 15th at +18. Limestone is tied for 16th at +19, and North Greenville is 18th at +20. And, of course, here on Sports Talk, we're very fair. We're very balanced. We're not sexist. The women's Division II, Super Region 2 leaderboard. They're playing in Germantown, Tennessee. Nova Southeastern is your leader at +8, and Limestone is 10th at +32. That's the only team from the state there in that one. And I guess that takes care of our Division II women's golfers that I know of.
I noticed this mixed up geography here with South Carolina, and I know the women are not complaining because you're in San Francisco. But what's wrong with this picture when the Gamecocks are out in San Francisco and the Washington Huskies are down in Tallahassee? That's some strange stuff. You were talking about
no rhyme or reason to anything the NCAA does, bro. It's just you can't you can't sometimes figure them out. They just like to do things just to do them.
Well, I wanted to go back to Chad Holbrook because it was interesting. I thought one of the reasons that when Ray Tanner wanted him not only for his recruiting prowess, but I think Ray, like a lot of coaches, likes to have a foil in the dugout. And Ray was the Earl Weaver guy. I want the 3-run bomb, this sort of thing. And Chad had this feeling, to talk him sometimes into playing small ball, which is sometimes Ray had to have Chad do. Now, I remember South Carolina College of Charleston, before they got their sea legs, they swept Georgia early in the season, a team that swept South Carolina. So don't be walking in, to the ballpark on Wednesday thinking that you're going to just waltz all over the College of Charleston.
Well, you got to keep in mind, as I pointed out earlier, South Carolina has had its struggles in the midweek. I mentioned the 5 losses to Group 4 teams. Obviously, those are the teams you're playing in the midweek. USC's midweek pitching has not been great. They're not going to throw. I guess they'll throw maybe Ridge Chapman out there on Wednesday, perhaps. maybe Mazinski. I think it'll be one of those two, depending on. I don't know how much work either one got this past weekend. You can comment on that, Will.
Majinski through Friday didn't look very good. Ridge Chapman threw twice over the weekend. I think because of the extra rest for the game being Wednesday and not Tuesday, I think that puts him on track to at least see some action on Wednesday. They like what Majinski's done on the Tuesdays, despite there was one start where he made that it was not good. But from that perspective, neither necessarily should be hampered by the weekend work. The one thing, though, I will say, and everything you said before about Holbrook commanding respect and the fact that he should be respected, I totally agree with all that. But having said that, just knowing the tenor of where the fan base is, the one thing that I don't necessarily think is going to happen is the fact that I do think that some South Carolina fans kind of hold Chad Holbrook in a way that it's almost kind of like he's that pound of flesh from the previous regime, and there's some still residual bitterness from that, especially given the way they were acting at the beginning of this year, kind of blaming the woeful start on basically the scraps of Holbrook and the stench of Holbrook, if you will. I think that's something that's an unfortunate byproduct of this.
Well, let's get something straight from the get-go here. He left a quality baseball team behind him. He had nothing to do with the injury factor, but he left a quality baseball team. The only hole that he left in the everyday lineup was first base, really. And then things got moved around because of injuries, and, it opened up an opportunity. Those injuries did open up an opportunity for Justin Rowe to step in, and he's been nothing short of sensational for them offensively and defensively. But look, all those guys he recruited, I'm just trying to think, is there anybody contributing in a major way that he did not recruit, he and his staff? You have to credit Jerry Myers and Sammy Esposito as well. They brought those players together, and that's why they have a chance now to be an NCAA tournament team, in that the collective talent is coming together, and obviously they're being well coached and well motivated by Mark Kingston. They like playing for Mark Kingston. Now, there must have been some erosion inside the dugout last season under Chad Holbrook. I say must have been. I mean, there was. I think it's been well documented, and whatever the reasons were, the clubhouse, the locker room, sort of got away from Chad Holbrook. There was a divide there between him and a faction of the players. I can't tell you how many, but there was. And apparently all the players that he recruited really like Mark Kingston and that staff, and are giving them everything they've got. And that's why they've been able, they could have caved in. That's why they've been able to turn the season around, along with getting healthy.
But I will say this, he couldn't have totally lost the dugout, because that same team waltzed into Hoover and did something that a lot of South Carolina teams don't do, and that's stay 3 or 4 days at the tournament.
That's true.
And if he would have pulled off, I think, one more win, probably would have made it.
I just go back to
the playoff.
I just go back to what Tolbert said after the Sunday loss to Clemson, where he said this team last year would never have fought back and come from behind to make a game out of it like they did against Clemson. And he said that, we'll do this for this coaching staff every day, Will.
And Hunter Taylor said something similar about the fact that anybody who played on the Chad Holbrook squad last year is not thinking about this game as anything else other than another game. So in that regard, I think, again, whether there's some bitterness or whether there's something involving the players that they didn't get along with him in the previous regime, that's still to be remained and still kind of a little bit murky, if you will. We'll come back. We'll update the situation from here and continue on Sports Talk. Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Monday evening, the 7th day of May. Clemson and Florida State still scoreless as they head to the bottom of the second inning. Clemson looked to be in a bit of trouble with runners at first and third and one out, but they rolled two on a ground ball and end up departing the top of the second inning still with no score, and they will come to bat here in their half of the second inning. The baseball rankings took a little bit of an interesting turn over the weekend. Corn, we mentioned the very liberal collegiate baseball still has South Carolina ranked, but no one else does.
Yeah, I mean, it's on the eyes of the holder, I guess, and they see something in South Carolina the other rankers don't do. But here's a recap of the rankings and the RPI for the state team. So Baseball America's got Clemson 8 and Coastal 19. D1 baseball, Clemson 8, Coastal 25. Perfect game, Clemson 5. And collegiate baseball has Clemson 5, USC 11, and Coastal 28. The RPI through Sunday, Clemson 10, Coastal 27, USC 42, Charleston 73. It is Wofford was 90. I left out a number here. I think 96. Furman was 156, Winthrop 208, Upstate 236, Citadel 256, Charleston Southern 261, and Presbyterian 276. And I want to take a moment, and we got the races going on here in the various leagues, and we've talked about the ACC and the SEC situation. Of course, Clemson sitting in really good shape at 18-8. They're just a game back of North Carolina. In the loss column, North Carolina's 18-6 for the overall regular season title. Clemson finishing up. They've got one more league series to go, and that's against a woeful Pittsburgh team. So you got to feel like, though they got to go up there, you got to feel like there's a good opportunity for Clemson to sweep that series. North Carolina still has to play 3 against Duke and 3 against Virginia Tech. So I like Clemson's chances of coming out of this thing with an ACC regular season championship based on how things stand now. SEC-wise, the Gamecocks at 13-11. They're third in the East behind Florida and Georgia, and they would be tied for – well, they'd have the tiebreaker with Ole Miss, so they would be overall fifth in the SEC, which is not going to get you that first round bye. No, let's see. Wait a minute. Get you into the double elimination portion of the tournament. So, and of course, they've got a chance to move up with 6 more league games to go. Southern Conference, Wofford is 11-7, 4 back of UNC Greensboro. Samford is in second place. Furman's down in 7th. The Citadel is 8th. In the Big South, Campbell's setting the pace, 3-game lead on Liberty. Winthrop is tied for 3rd with High Point, 4 back at 13-8. Charleston Southern and Presbyterian 6 and 15 in the league. CAA Northeastern is your leader, 14-4. Charleston is next, game and a half back at 14-7. Sunbelt, Coastal finally lost a Sunbelt series. They'd won 11 straight series in the Sunbelt, lost to Louisiana over the weekend. They still lead in their division. They still have the best record in the league overall, 18-6, 3.5-game lead on South Alabama. And the Atlantic Sun, it's a Stetson leading 11-3, and Upstate is tied for a 7th with New Jersey Institute of Technology at 5-10. So NJIT and Upstate tied for the last place spot there in the Atlantic Sun. That's a look at the races around the leagues involving state teams. We've got a couple of more weekends to go here in the regular season. It'll be time for tournament action. Looking forward to being in Hoover once again, covering the Gamecocks in the SEC tournament, and you will be heading up to Durham for the ACC tournament.
Very much looking forward to that. Like I said, I've done the Hoover thing, so I'm looking forward to seeing a new tournament. And again, I know that the tournament does run a little bit differently than the traditional tournaments, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that all goes. Did you see the Post and Courier's Gene Sapakoff is ripping off our spring game idea that we had a couple of weeks back about trying to have games played between different teams? Did you see he said that? And he says he wants Clemson and Georgia to play in one, and then he said South Carolina and Florida State should do the same. And I'm just sitting here, I'm thinking, dude's ripping off our idea. He says he's had it since '99.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hate to break the news to you, but he's written about that several times.
Well, just saying, we not only were we talking about it first, but it was from my question to Dabo Swinney that he took the quote from. Is for the story.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, I'm not trying to say that he's saying anything proprietary.
No,
but at the same time,
it's
our deal.
Before you pull a muscle, patting yourself on the back, I'm telling you, this is something that he's written about for many, many years. He didn't take it from us. He's made this argument before. Now, the fact that you asked Dabo about it and he commented about it, that's all good. It's been an ongoing conversation thing here in this state for a long time because, people want to see something different in the spring, I think, maybe a different look to the spring game, another chance of raising some money or whatever. Maybe they do a charity thing instead of thinking about, money to build some new, plusher bathrooms for recruits when they come on campus. Maybe they do something for charity, huh?
We all can agree on something. What they're doing now sucks. And what they're doing now is a disservice, at least from the entertainment standpoint, to those who attend.
I will say this, Will. There was a time when it didn't suck. So apparently the fans get bored quickly. To me, I would prefer having an exhibition game 2 or 3 weeks before the season for a spring game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because now you get serious. Well, you're gonna have the injury risk going to the restroom. I mean, it's gonna happen. You can slip in the bathtub, anything can happen.
Well, again, you got to think about this. You talk about injury risk. Your injury risk is cut in half when you're playing another team versus playing yourself. So you're actually decreasing the risk of injury. Anytime you play football, whether it's, just in a backyard scrimmage, you can hurt yourself. There's no guarantee that you'll never get hurt playing football, no matter what form or fashion or where you're doing it. But you do cut that risk in terms of your team in half because only half your team is on the field, or you're only making up half the players on the field in a scrimmage against somebody else versus 100% of the people on the field. So, I mean, I think it's an idea I think it's an idea whose time has come for some more serious discussion. If it's done, I mean, what's the right way to do it? Do you treat it like a real game, or do you treat it like a scrimmage where the coaches are on the field doing instruction and all that kind of stuff, like they would if they were doing an intra-squad scrimmage?
I think, again, you do a controlled scrimmage. You don't try to make it like a real game. You don't keep score. Okay, I mean, you people will keep score no matter what happens.
So why will you have the scoreboards turned on if you're not going to keep score?
Well, that's the thing. There's invariably going to be the temptation for people to know what the score is. But again, I think that takes out the whole, oh, well, you lost the scrimmage to, X team or whatever, especially if it's a team that's of lesser value. Again, there's ways to control this type of thing and put it in a way where it is not only mutually beneficial, but the embarrassment factor is turned off, and you also get value out of it. I think that there's plenty of things that can be explored. I just think that the current tenor of the way that spring football is handled in college football, I don't even want to say it's antiquated, because like Pro said, it did not used to stink this much. But I think we're getting to a situation where we as fans and media see less and less and less and less of what a team is actually supposed to see, or is supposed to be. Yeah.
The only thing I would think the coaches would be reticent to is the fact that when you have a spring game, it's all you, and they bring the recruits in and they say it's all you. They don't want to see a different colored uniform in the same stadium with guys they're trying to recruit. That's the only thing. But Will Muschamp has been in the NFL when they've had controlled scrimmages for years in practice with other teams. He probably has an idea of how they can do it at the college level if he was the kind that wants to do it.
Still no score here at Doug Kingsmore. We're in the third inning between Florida State and Clemson. More updates on that when we continue here on Sports Talk.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
We hit to the bottom of the third inning here at Clemson. Still no score between the Tigers and Florida State. Clemson has put the leadoff man on, though, here in the third inning on a base hit up the middle by Robert Jolly. A second hit for Clemson. Florida State held the one hit. Jake Higginbotham has looked good in 2 of his 3 innings. He ran into a little bit of a hiccup in the second inning where he had first and third and 1 out, but Clemson's defense bailed him out with a ground ball double play. And again, no score. These two teams split the first 2 games of this series. Rubber game is tonight. Clemson trying to maintain first place in the ACC Atlantic. Corn, you had something you wanted to add about South Carolina's standings position.
Yeah. I mess this up every year, so why should this year be any different? And looking at the SEC tournament bracket, you need to finish in the top 4. The top 4 get the bye out of the single elimination and into double elimination. So I was talking about South Carolina possibly finishing, well, they would be 5th right now. That will get you into the single elimination day on Tuesday, and the 5th seed would play the last game of the day. So what I'm saying is South Carolina needs to win some more games to move up and get in that top 4. The top 4 get the bye directly into double elimination. That's big because it allows you to save your pitching, of course. You go into that single elimination and you're using up all kind of pitching to try to get into the main draw. So I wanted to make that clear because I mess it up every year. Also want to mention another recruiting note. Clemson this evening has offered 2021 offensive lineman Micah Morris out of Kingsland, Georgia, a highly recruited player. So Clemson must have gone by there and offered him today. And I had one other thing that I wanted to mention to you. I'll let you update things there, then I'll pass along what I wanted to say.
Yeah, if you heard the roar of the crowd here, I don't know if you guys had to be turned up or not, but the roar you heard was for an opposite field home run from Logan Davidson, left center field, just beyond the 360 mark, and the Tiger Paw in left center field, and Clemson has taken a 2-0 lead on Florida State. Were you able to find your note?
Yes, I was. NASCAR. This is being reported by Reuters, and they are reporting that the majority owners of NASCAR are exploring options that include selling a majority stake of the company. The founding family, the Francises, are reportedly working with Goldman Sachs to explore potential deals. The report notes that all discussions are preliminary. No agreement of any kind is certain. And so that's something to keep an eye on here moving forward if the France family decides to dump NASCAR somehow, some way.
As I told you earlier off the air, please do not let Vince McMahon buy NASCAR. We need more wrecks. Need more wrecks. This is what we need. He'll probably stick some wrestlers in the racing cars. I just, it makes me afraid when I see any kind of sports franchise for sale.
Yeah.
And Vince McMahon has his checkbook out.
Yeah, I don't know what you can do for to help get NASCAR back to the popularity that it enjoyed 15, 20 years ago. I think NASCAR is a heavily personality-driven sport. The relationship between driver and fan is crucial to the success of that sport. And I think over time, as drivers have retired for the most part, unfortunately, we've had some deaths along the way as well. We've lost those kind of drivers, I think. I think today's NASCAR driver, by and large, is a product of corporate America and doesn't relate. The fans don't relate to a lot of them the way they used to with Richard or Buddy Baker or just name them, Dale Earnhardt, on down the list. I mean, who of today's top drivers would you say? I mean, Jimmy Johnson, but it looks like his career is starting to wane. I mean, they're really struggling right now. I mean, Kyle Busch is the best driver on the circuit. Boom. I don't think there's any doubt, but he's not a personable guy that the fans can get close to.
But he's one that the fan that likes him likes the fact that everybody else hates him. Remember when Dale was hated for a while?
Yeah, but Dale was still,
but
he was bigger than life.
But my thing is, there's still some that hated Dale, but the ones who loved him, they loved it. The other crowd hated him.
Darrell Waltrip, he was the same way. He was a lightning rod. Is there a Darrell Waltrip in today's circuit of NASCAR
think it
drivers?
is.
No, you don't have that kind of personality.
Here's the problem, and golf has had this issue too. Although they've enjoyed some more prosperity as of recently because they're getting again a lot more colorful type people. Just from the standpoint of people who are relatable. NASCAR needs to do a better job of marketing itself. I mean, they need to market these superstars more. And again, like you said, they're going through a very unprecedented scenario where all these guys are leaving at once and have left the interest cupboard, if you will, very barren. And I think that's the problem, is that you don't have guys who have maintained longevity in the sport and sustained longevity. And there isn't, anytime you look at, even look at the NBA, for example, the biggest thing that people needed after Jordan left was they needed somebody to either attack onto, either as a villain or as somebody who can be a protagonist. NASCAR really doesn't have a protagonist-antagonist relationship right now amongst prominent drivers who have sustained success. And the other thing I think is the biggest deal is that, and I think the restricted plate races have this in a way, and there are also some of the other races, but the technology is such with NASCAR and the way these cars are made that it's taken a lot of the skill and the ingenuity out of the actual racing. And it seems that you're seeing a lot of the kind of the same patterns develop, and I just don't necessarily think that we're getting the kind of driving and the kind of Rubbins racing type scenarios that we saw like in the Richard Petty days and the Dale Earnhardt days and things of that nature.
Well, I would say so far this season it's been a boring season.
Yes,
we've seen a lot of drivers win races by extended lengths. There's just no drama in the last 10, 15 laps. I'm not a big fan of the stage racing. I think it's another gimmick that NASCAR has thrown out there. It hasn't caught on with me personally. I think that NASCAR, the teams, the fact that they're changing their colors by the races with sponsorships and different sponsors and different paint schemes. I mean, when it was in its glory day, a fan could attach himself to a driver, a team, and a sponsor.
Yes.
And every Sunday at 1 o'clock, because they were consistent when they ran on Sundays, they ran at 1 o'clock. You knew who your driver was, what his paint scheme was going to be, and that's who you rooted for because you dressed up like him. And that's what made NASCAR successful. They've gotten away from all that stuff. And I don't know if the powers that be there can see that and try to, get back to what it was that made them so successful. Maybe they can't get back to it. Maybe it was just a time and a place in that era of sports in America where they filled a niche, and that niche now has been taken over by soccer or frisbee golf or whatever else is out there now.
Well,
it's all esports.
Well, the other thing is that when the manufacturers were really in it, it was almost like a family thing. You root for whoever the driver was. You root for the Chrysler, you root for the Ford, you root for the Chevy. I'll never drive a Chevy, and you root for the Ford. And a lot of the cars actually, even though they were souped up, they looked like the car you drove. But they, it's a little bit different now. But
back to a relatability issue.
Yeah, it's really tough, and let's face it, a lot of people are so into other things and the attention getting of what's going on right now. It's because the NASCAR race starts. Here's baseball, college baseball has now picked up a big audience, and then you got the playoffs. And for those really who like ice, they'll venture over to the Stanley Cup. There's so much stuff to watch that NASCAR gets the low bridge of the totem pole.
Hey, let me drop in one more quick note. Charleston Southern outfielder Josh Litchfield, who's out of Somerville, the Big South Player of the Week this week, had a very good week for the Buccaneers, hitting .429, and they had a nice weekend, winning a couple of games in their weekend series. All right, Will, what's happening up there?
2-0 Clemson leads Florida State. We'll keep you updated on that on Sports Talk SC on Twitter. Hope you enjoyed the show today. We'll talk to you when we're all back together tomorrow in our Columbia studios.